นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมาสสามิ
So today we embarked upon another period of group practice, group retreat, as we say, and the hopefully for most of us this is not signaling an increase in the hours of meditation that we're doing. Hopefully we're all putting these kind of hours into our formal practice back at our kutis anyway. This is a kind of change of style of practice, and it's been a important kind of plank of the way that I've been setting things up here over the last year or two to have opportunities both to develop practice alone and to develop it in a group. The ideal being to develop a continuity and a evenness practice which can adapt to situations, not being someone who can only practice in a group and then becomes heedless or lazy or finds it unable to practice alone, or the other extreme, to be one who can only practice alone and has a lot of aversion to practicing in a group. Certainly there are things to be said for both ways of practice. As far as practicing in a group like this, then the disadvantage is that you cannot establish your daily schedule to suit you, whereas the advantage is that you cannot establish the daily schedule to suit you. The having to conform to a schedule, and one that perhaps doesn't always suit us, is a very good opportunity to learn about our minds. And this after all is the purpose of our practice: develop the wisdom that can abandon the causes of suffering. And the way that we do that, and one of the techniques, is to go against the flow. We don't go with the flow, we go against the flow of craving and attachment, whether it's attachment to sensual desires or attachment to views and ideas. It's also a chance to develop patient endurance. Although we perhaps pay lip service to the idea of patient endurance, perhaps our actual devotion to the reality of it is doesn't actually live up to our ideas about it. And I wonder how many of us would actually have continued sitting or practicing here with all the mosquitoes biting us just now. If there hadn't been some kind of social pressure on us to do so. I wonder how many of you actually enjoy the opportunity to develop some patience and really see that as a virtue and as a gain, something of great value to you in your life. And right here is this is practice. I mean, it's not just something that we judge or measure by our ability to concentrate on an object, but so how do we deal with unpleasant situations or physical discomfort? And if you take a standard of my samadhi and this is not a conducive situation to development of samadhi, you can get a lot of frustration. But if you're skillful and wise in your practice, then your intention and your effort is always to make the best out of situations that you find themselves in, noticing the various tendencies in the mind which arise when we are faced with what we don't like. It's Buddha's very blunt kind of exposition in the morning chanting. What association with the dislike is suffering, and what happens when we are associated with dislike, with what we dislike. First impulse is to get rid of it. If we can't get rid of it, to get away from it, to somehow manipulate the situation to reduce the discomfort. Of course, in certain circumstances, that's the sensible thing to do. But it's a matter of drawing a line sometimes, just being willing to grit your teeth and bear with things that you don't like. And whether it's heat or cold, hunger, thirst, physical discomfort of being bitten by insects. And this is practice. This is what it's about. And as far as I remember, the first word in the Thai language that I ever learned was Otton. Hearing it in Dhamma talks so often, it's one of the words that was stuck. And I asked the Western monk who was there at Wat Pong with me what it meant. So it's my first word in the language, probably one of the most important I learned as well. So notice if you, once your mind grasps on to unpleasant sensation, whether it's an unpleasant physical sensation or it's an unpleasant thought in the mind or an unpleasant perception or fear, and it just dwells on that thought, dwells on that idea until the thing just expands and gets so blown up. In the English idiom, we say we're making a mountain out of a molehill, and this is the essence of the unenlightened mind. It's always making mountains out of molehills. And when it's not doing that, and it's probably making molehills out of mountains, things that should be concerned about, then denying or turning its back on and trying to make light of. So very difficult for us to give the right weight to things, to give the significance, to have the correct perspective on our experience. So practicing in this way, please do take into account all the various reactions that you have, the changing reactions that you have to practicing like this. I don't like it like this. I don't like sitting in a group. It's not so good as sitting in my kuti. Or that this person makes a noise and that person makes a noise, and why aren't they more considerate? All the various ideas that you have about what practice should be, and how you feel when the bell goes at 3 o'clock, how you feel as you walk to the sala in the morning. What is your mental state? Is the positive state? Is a negative mental state? You start off from those very simple distinctions of kusala and akusala. About the meal, after the meal, the afternoon meeting, evening meeting. There's this constant comment in the mind, sort of background analysis, background chat, background moaning, or enjoyment, or whatever. This is not something apart from the practice. Don't make that kind of distinction. This is very much part and parcel of it. And this is what you should be looking at. This constant, unremitting effort to be aware of what's going on in your body and mind. And that's not something which is dependent on the posture. Defilement can arise in any posture, and so can be a skillful means to remedy defilements. So this effort to be there in the present throughout the whole day, to maintain the mindfulness, not just when you're sitting, not just when you're walking, but when you're not sitting, when you're not walking, that sense of restraint and composure that is the mark of the samana. You see this sign of the samana, someone who is restrained. The eyes are restrained, ears are restrained, nose is restrained, tongue is restrained, body is restrained. It's that beauty, the composure of one who has that kind of restraint. It's not a false or artificial, unnatural kind of restraint, but it's the restraint of, you see a very natural musician or swimmer or sportsman or someone who's completely at one with their chosen medium and the rules and regulations which determine the sport or the activity in which they are engaged. And similarly, one who has the restraint of the samana is one who is not tense or artificial in any way. And that peace transmits itself to others. And this is a way of giving to the community in which you live, and just through your presence, we tend to think of giving in terms of doing, speaking, but often the most powerful kind of giving is giving of being, and that's something that you can develop only through this devotion to the training, sila, samadhi, panya. Of course, the foundation for this is sila, vinaya. Vinaya is one of the words that appears in Thai language in a slightly modified, with slightly modified meaning. In Thai language these days, vinaya means something rather similar to self-discipline. When you think about it, that is a very important, or we could almost say essential, aspect of our sila, monastic discipline, because there are no there's no kind of police force. There are no hidden video cameras in the monastery. Nobody's keeping tabs on you. The vinaya is, as words of one of our teachers, based on the honor system. So whether or not you keep to your discipline, whether or not you follow the rules, the regulations of the monastery, then it has to come through your own volition and through your own wisdom, which sees the value of it, and through that capacity to stop and to restrain the impulse of the moment, and to skillfully stop the mind which is clamoring, I want, I will, I won't, I need, I can't. And to see that so many of these very loud, insistent, panicky kinds of voices in our mind are just paper tigers, that they're very easily dealt with if you're resolute enough and just willing to make a stand and just say no, they say. I mean, it's not much more complicated than that. But it's what you have to really see the value of it yourself. This is a self-discipline. So coming to the meetings, all the meetings, coming on time for the meetings, not nipping out during the meetings anywhere, staying until the end of the meetings. Now this is for your own benefit and for the benefit of others, for the harmony of the Sangha. So to see the importance of that, and to have that sense of vinaya or self-discipline, because otherwise what are you following? Are you following your ideas and your desires with a kind of veneer of reasoning, just to make it seem more acceptable in most cases? So with the vinaya as our basis, and with the constant turning towards restraint, not allowing the mind to get into its fall into the same old ruts of indulgence, and looking for the food of visual forms and the food of pleasant sounds and the food of conversation and the foods of all the various foods that we try to absorb throughout the day, and just having that sense of contentment and being one of few desires, contentment with the present moment, contentment with the present experience, the present reality, not wanting anything more than that, being willing to open our eyes, open our hearts to whatever's going on right now. And this is where we see the Four Noble Truths right now, not constantly trying to change things to get them the way that we want them, but willing to learn from whatever the condition is at any given moment. So mindfulness is really the key, because in the formal meditation practice, what we're really doing is developing mindfulness, anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, and our ability to do that, or indeed the various obstacles that arise when we try to do that, are not at all to be separated from our experience outside of the meditation practice. So it's not completely random which hindrances tend to arise in your mind. These tend to be pretty much an indication of your general preoccupations, our attitudes to life. If you're very someone who's lust and interest in the sensual world and delights in the world of the senses, then you're of course quite likely to have the hindrance of kama chanta arising in your mind quite a lot. You can't just decide not to have it or force it out of your mind if your fundamental attitude to the sensual world is one of, yes, give me more, and delighting in it, then that's going to manifest as hindrance over and over and over again. If you're someone who is cynical kind of person who almost is magnetically drawn to the faults within yourself and others, and finds them to be so much more significant than the positive aspects of people, situations, and that's going to manifest as a hindrance in your meditation. As someone who tends to seek distraction from the unpleasant through dullness, through going to sleep, through shutting down the mind, or one who is any kind of tends to drift into laziness and apathy a lot, then the hindrance of sloth and torpor is liable to come up a lot. For someone who just allows their brains to be flooded with information and conversations and sensual impressions without any kind of wise filtering of what is coming in through the sense doors. Someone who's equally unrestrained in expression of thoughts and feelings then of course mental agitation is going to arise. There's someone who thinks a lot, reads lots of different about different meditation traditions, different religions, different philosophies, different opinions of various teachers, amass a lot of information about all the various different attitudes to spiritual practice. It's quite likely that you're going to suffer some doubts. And when you reach a difficulty, the instinctive reaction will be to doubt, are you doing the right thing? Getting the right teachings? Maybe you should try something else, or maybe then again you shouldn't. And you go around in circles, and this doubt, this unwillingness to commit yourself, unwillingness to take a risk, wanting everything to be cut and dry before you take any chances. Want a guarantee. If you live your life wanting guarantees that what you're doing is right and correct and 100%, and of course you never do anything. So these are kind of hindrances come up in meditation, the hindrances that are coming up in our daily life, manifesting in both. So we have to work with them both on and off the meditation cushion, just starting to notice them, noticing the whole energy and the way they manifest physically, noticing how mental states generally have quite distinctive physical counterparts, and to start to tune into how different hindrances manifest physically, and not just the obvious nodding up and down when you're sleepy, but just actually physical sensations in the body associated with different mental states, and there can sometimes a very skillful way of dealing with strong emotion is to switch from the mental aspect to the physical aspect and see it merely as physical sensation. And this prevents the mind from indulging and magnifying the mental state, and gradually subsides. In the meditation itself, then remembering the chief, the important qualities and Dhammas, apart from mindfulness itself, the ability to remember, to bear in mind, not to forget the meditation object, also not to forget the instructions of the knowledge that one has for dealing with various hindrances that arise. So the ability to bear in mind, not forget, to bring to mind as appropriate function of sati, or mindfulness. Then there's sampajanya, a sense of clear comprehension, clear comprehension of purpose, in practice, clear comprehension of suitability, the appropriateness of a particular technique at any particular time, being able to adapt as is necessary, is wise. A clear comprehension of the object, clear comprehension of non-delusion, it's a clarity of mind. And really, you really notice that, and focus on that sense of clarity of mind, It's a beautiful thing, a jewel of the mind, and something which can be carried throughout daily activities more and more successfully. So the Sampajanya in the suttas, this is something that I've been trying to stress. This means this awareness of the posture that you're in. When you're sitting, you sit sitting down, standing up, stretching for something, tipping water into a cup, drinking from a cup, putting the cup down again, putting your yam down, picking your yam up, putting your robes on, taking your robes off. There's still a lot of sloppiness around all these kinds of actions that can be seen in the monastery these days. And this is Buddha himself, that this is a time to bring up this sense of clear comprehension. Every time you put your robe on, to put it on with care and attention, respect for the robe, taking it off, where you put your robe down, how you put your robe down. Do you just sort of throw it down, or do you fold it nicely and place it with attention? This is a very concrete way of developing this sense of attention and respect for the present moment. Putting your shoes on, taking your shoes off, putting your umbrella up, putting your umbrella down, entering your kuti. What do you do when you first get into your kuti? Bow, put your things down. And these keep you grounded and help you to maintain this constant mindfulness, not just as a beautiful idea, but as something that's very practical, something that you can do. Making a point of mindfulness around opening and closing doors, for instance. You can having these little tricks, if you like, to bring you back to the present moment, making for a whole day. Be mindful of every time you open and close a door, or every time you put on or take off your shoes. And, this does help when you come to practice on a more refined level. You're coming to meditate on an object, meditate on the breathing process. Again, with the meditation, always be very humble and be willing just to start from scratch. Recently heard from a monk who's been practicing very diligently for many years now, over 15 years. And he said he'd been on Tudong for a while, and he got to the monastery where he was staying for Pansar, and he realized that his mind wasn't very peaceful at all. And so he started off back at square one, scratch again. So walking meditation, tried a mantra, didn't work very well. So he started counting his steps, counting 1 to 5, then 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8, 1 to 9. And he said before very long, he said he just got so much energy from it, joy from it, that he's walks many hours every day. I just really appreciated his willingness just to come back to this very simple, very basic practice, and starting again, and how very soon the sense of well-being and joy in the effort to abandon the unwholesome and develop the wholesome arose in his mind. and became a real refuge for him again. So at the same time as we need to be keeping a watch on our successes and our failures, and learning from them, learning what to avoid, learning what to develop. At the same time, keeping this beginner's mind and starting afresh every day, being a beginner, and being willing to go back to very basic, simple practices again and again, putting down the not getting into reading too many books and too many high-flown, too much high-flown philosophy. It's a very basic, simple practice that Ajahn Jayasaro was teaching us. Eat little, sleep little, talk little, or as in this retreat, talk not at all unless absolutely necessary. Then the 3 practices which the Buddha said are never wrong: moderation in food, that's Ajahn Jayasaro, eat little, and wakefulness, sleeping is the optimum amount, as little as you can get away with, as little as you need to be able to maintain mindfulness and clear comprehension throughout the day, not torturing your body, but not seeking a refuge in sleep and rest. Sense restraint, of course. Again, seeing sense restraint not just as sort of some, you're cutting things off, you're actually gaining something. They say this composure. So these are the supports for practice. And the chanting and the devotional practice, again, it's like there's a skeleton there. There's something you have to flesh out for yourself. You can do the chanting in a very perfunctory kind of way, very automatic kind of way, and get nothing from it. But if you really give yourself to it, then the recollection of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha can truly be Puttanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, and can give rise to a lot of joy which energizes the other aspects of practice. So this is a chance to put forth effort as a group all together, and as I mentioned before, be considerate for the others in the group coming in and coming out, trying to be as quiet as possible. Make it your goal to be able to enter and leave meditation hall without anybody knowing that you've entered or left. And then working with these 5 hindrances and being very content to do that. This is the job. Everyone has different constellation of hindrances, and some have more than others, but in spiritual life you can't compare yourself with anybody else. It's a foolish thing to do. We don't know what kind of practice, what our experiences have been in past lives. We all bring stuff with us, and we've all got our own difficulties and our own challenges. The grass is always greener in the other field, as they say, and we tend to think that our challenges are more harder, harsher than others. But they probably think the same thing. And so, this is what we've got to work with. Some people have a lot of sexual desire to work with, and having to let go of sexual fantasies. Some people have a lot of anger, aversion, irritation coming out. Other people are dull and sleepy, and others are such agitation and restlessness. The people full of doubts. We all have our own particular work to do, but these defilements are not intrinsic to the mind. They are alien to the mind. It's important that you have that faith and confidence in that truth, although you may not yet see it. Some of you may have recall relating an incident before I came to Thailand, something which incident always stands out in my mind very prominently from recollections of traveling years, traveling days. I was traveling around the south of India and went up to the mountain range in central southern India, and was hiking around and went to stay in a little village, hill tribe, not exactly hill tribe, but people who lived in a rather remote little village in the midst of these mountains. People very friendly, also very dirty to my eye. But first day I was there, I decided to go down to a stream which was about 1 kilometer away, or so away from the village. And as I walked out of the village, all the young children in the village decided to tag along. So I felt a bit like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, this long, straggly line of children, all fascinated to see where I was going. And I got to the stream and got my soap out of the toilet bag, and all the kids were really fascinated, even more fascinated now. They just didn't know what the soap was and what it did. And I gave a bar of soap to these little girls and told them what to do. And they started rubbing this soap on their skin, and suddenly they burst into this incredible kind of laughter and amazement, because the skin the color of their skin changed. What they thought was actually skin color was dirt, and they'd never had soap in their life before. They didn't know what soap was, and just to suddenly see their skin change color like that was like magic to them. And I always remember the kind of the delight and the squeals and the fascination when they all came and looked at this little girl's arm where she'd been rubbing with the soap, and this sudden realization that what they thought was just part of her arm was in fact caked in dirt. And this is what meditation is about, isn't it? Using this soap, and you realize that things are just sort of caked in, that you thought were part of your mind. Through meditation, you begin to see not so, and it's a mistake. It's a mistaken perception that these defilements are just that. They are things which sully the mind, but they are things which can be cleansed from the mind with the power of mindfulness, power of clear comprehension, and so that atapi, that effort, and determined, ardent effort, a sense of ardency, come what may, and that willingness to bear up to difficulties which arise, and to not be deterred by them. So the Buddha was saying that giving these famous or beautiful similes for the mind which goes beyond the hindrances, cleanses the mind of the hindrances. It's one who's cleansed the mind of the hindrance of sensual desire, like someone who's been in debt and frees himself from debt. And we realize that realization is free from debt. It's like the realization you're free of the hindrance of sensual desire. One who's had a strong fever, has been very ill, realizes that his fever's gone. It's like someone who's freed from